Welcome everyone to another CTC software webinar. My name is Sean Zerbis. I'm the Director of BIM Development here at CTC Software, and in today's session, we're going to be continuing the Nexus CMS User Learning Series, talking about content details. We're going to dig deep into content details today. Now, as always, of course, these webinars are recorded. So for those of you watching this on YouTube, we hope this earns a like and subscribe from you. For those of you participating live, we do try to answer questions live in the webinar. So if you do have questions about today's topic, throw that into the QA window in GoToWebinar, and I'll try to be answering those as we're going through today's topics. Also, we save a QA session for the end for those of you whose questions maybe don't necessarily fit well within what I'm talking about. All right, let's jump right in and see what today's topic kind of really focuses on. In previous sessions, we've talked about searching for content. Talked about that pretty extensively, how to search, how to kind of filter stuff down. And maybe you found what you think is the right piece of content, but is it really the right piece of content? I like to know 100% before I load it into my project that I got the right thing. And so we're going to take a look at how the content details panel can really give you more than just a preview image for something. It can actually give you the data from within the piece of content live and fast. You can see everything, all the detailed parameters and properties that have been captured about something just on demand, whether you're doing AutoCAD, whether you're doing Revit, whether you're just looking at a PDF. The data and details are all there for the data that's captured. So we're going to dig deep into that. We're going to take a look at how you can really use this and some strategies that might be beneficial for you while you're kind of looking for content just before you load it. We're going to cover four major things. We're going to talk about how you get access to the content details panel and how you can use that. We are going to navigate through the basic content details, the things that are common to everything. Then we're going to inspect the specialized detail, focusing today pretty much on Revit content because it has the most details. We're going to talk about all the strategies that can work really well for it. And then we're going to search within that content type data, again, focusing on specifically Revit, searching within that to really make sure it's what we want. I have a couple of examples that I want to look for here. So first, let's talk about accessing the content details itself. Like, how do we get it? We're going to start with the basic search for something, find what we're looking for, and then we're going to kind of begin to investigate what's going on there. So I'm going to do this live inside of the CMS environment. In fact, I already had a search pulled up here, but say I didn't have a search pulled up. Say I go in here and I'm doing just like all of the content from a particular library, and then I filter that on down. I want to do a panel board, and we'll just kind of start with that, see what shows up. Yeah, 44 items, a whole bunch of stuff that somehow matches panel board. I'm going to put an extra little filter on that. Say I want to look for a 200 amp panel board. These families surface, these 6 components, these 6 items in my library, they surface. So again, we've already talked about all the filtration and a little bit about saved searches and whatnot in previous webinars. But here, I found some things, and I'm looking for something that somehow matches 200 amp. But before we talk about that, we're talking about how do we get access to the details about this thing. So if you pick on something, you select a piece of content, if you right-click it, you get a flyout menu here that lets you do some things. And in this case, I'm looking for the detail information. I'm going to right-click and then choose detail from the flyout. This is a single component in your search results. Whatever that single component is, right-click detail, and it'll pull up a content details panel. This is how you get access to that panel in the first place. And then from here, you can begin to investigate the details. I'm going to close this out for a second. We're going to jump to the next slide here real quick. So we're going to talk about what is common to all pieces of content. What are the common details that are available there? Once again, take a look at this live. So pick a different one, right-click, detail. It pops up a detail window specific to that piece of content. Within here, the top portion, everything that's pretty much above Revit properties is common to everything here. So if it's a PDF, have all these common properties. If it's an AutoCAD file, common properties. It'll tell you some information about the reviews that are associated to a piece of content. You can actually read through the reviews right here, see the average rating for something. If something has some attachments, you will see those attachments here as well. And then below that, by the way, see and access the attachments. And then below that, I've got content properties. This will tell you things like what libraries something is associated to, especially if it's more than one. That can be kind of meaningful to know if you're a library manager. I like knowing, all the libraries something that I'm dealing with is associated to. It'll also then tell you here, oops, I accidentally advanced the slide. That was unintentional. Come back to this here. There we go. It'll tell you things like if it's in the cloud or not, if it's a cloud-hosted piece of content, when it was added, who added it, when it was last updated, and who did that. It'll give you access to some of the revision history for that piece of content. So you can open that up and get some more detail, if there's any comments about the revisions that were processed in at the time. You can get some of that information right here for all of the different kinds of pieces of content. Doesn't matter what it is, okay? I'm going to do another little example here. Let's do a search for swing single. Let this thing go find me some stuff. Let's actually filter this down to just my library. Give me just my stuff. I'm expecting to see a door. Interesting. Some of my content may have been removed. That's fun. Revit content. Alrighty. Oh, I know why. Because it's filtering for just 2023. That's why it's doing what it's doing. My apologies, y'all. I'm actually going to find a piece of content that's a little bit older here that by design, I wanted something that was a bit older. This guy is what I was looking for because this has some detail that has some reviews on it. I can see the review data, right? Door breaks when inserted into walls thinner than 4 inches. So this particular door had a problem. This was reviewed back in 22. And the person never updated their review because this door was updated since then and has probably been fixed. So I got to go talk to Joe Demo and see if they can update their review on this. Now, one thing I want to point out about the content details, notice how you can have multiple details panels open simultaneously. This is important because sometimes I want to review the details for a couple of different pieces of content at the same time, and I don't want to have to lose my place for the one that I was just reviewing. So these are intentionally opened and intentionally closed windows that you can work with, all right? One final one that I want to work with here, let me just go search for LOD, see if I can find something for this. And let's do maybe everything. Relevance. And it's possible I removed this from my library as well. Let's do LOD plus PDF. No, I must have removed it. That's really fun. Yeah, I was looking for one that had an attachment on it that I knew where it was pointing. Actually, I think I can search another library real quick here. Let's do the public libraries and hit up the IMI library. I'll search for just brick, and maybe these might have some attachments associated to them. If I go into the detail, yeah, so there's brick information here, right? This attachment that's associated to this particular piece of content. If I click on it, it'll bring up, in my case, on another screen, some information from IMI about that particular product that's available here. So you can access those attachments from here as well. Sometimes those attachments are attached files you can download, right? But that detail is all available within the content details. So you can nest information and associate extra data to something that's not necessarily a part of the properties of a piece of content, all right? So let's go back now and search for the thing that I was doing earlier. We're going to take a look at those panels because there's a specific kind of filter that I want to do on this real quick. So we're going to do all content, panel board, and we're going to do the 200 amp that I wanted there so I can find that. So we were talking about the ability to pull up detail and seeing more than one item at the same time. So I can pull up 2 detail windows. I can inspect both panel boards, see what their properties are, and then when I'm done, I can make the decision as to which one it is I actually want to load. This is why I really like this new kind of methodology within the CMS where I get very intentional content details. And as I click to the next item, it doesn't just reset where I was. It keeps open whatever it was I had, so I can pull up yet another detail panel if I need to inspect the details of 3 different items and know at the top here which item that happens to be for. So, all right. So let's take a look at some of the, and my details panels are actually covering up some stuff here. Let's take a look at some specialized detail information now. We're going to dig deeper into the Revit-centric details. And again, this is going to be done live. So if I open up this panel board 1, we'll just use the 1 detail window here in this case. I'm going to expand out my Revit properties. When I expand this out, I get a bunch of extra information about the Revit-centric data, or if this was AutoCAD content or Civil 3D content, I can expand that out and get that program's specialized data about those elements. In the case of AutoCAD, or Revit rather, you get things like what Revit category is it? What units of measure are commonly used in that family? Is it imperial or is it metric? What Revit versions, plural in a lot of cases, are associated to that? And I can even inspect specifically version year type data here. So I might have different properties and parameter values in 2025, different than what I did in the original 2020 family, depending on how you're managing and maintaining your content. So if I go in here now, I can inspect this data even more. If I click on a type that's inside of this list, I can see all of its parameter data that's available. Every parameter and value that's in there associated to this type sorts itself alphabetically by parameter name in this list. And I have this little checkbox turned on right now, but if I uncheck this, it'll actually show me all parameters in the family, even those that have no value whatsoever. And so I like to check the, hide things without a value, because if it doesn't have a value, it's not really that meaningful in most cases for me as a consumer of the content. I want things that actually have value. That's why this result showed up most likely, is because the piece of content has a value that it found in its search. So one of the things we're going to do here now is search within that type data. You can actually further filter this and further manipulate this search, because I found a piece of content that somehow matches a property, but why does it match that property? Why is it even manifesting for me? So we're going to dig in here and actually look at some of this data even more. I'm going to do one more search here just so we can kind of see why this works. I'm going to copy this or cut this so I can come back to it in a minute. Let's do another search here for Titus. This is going to look through all of my library and find me stuff that somehow matches Titus. We've talked about this before in the search session, where it's looking at the content and digging deep within it, so it's not exclusively searching the file name itself. So if I at random here, let's just kind of scroll down randomly, I'll pick this guy here and I pull up its details. Something about this somehow matches Titus. Now when I'm looking at this, I'm seeing round ceiling diffuser, that's the name of the file. I'm seeing it's an air terminal, that's cool. I'm seeing some type names over here, but none of this still is really indicating to me that this has anything to do with Titus. If I randomly pick on one of these and I go take a look at the parameters, I could scroll through and eventually find something that matches Titus. But a lot of the families that I work with, they've got a lot of parameters inside of here. So I'm going to go in here and just filter for Titus. And this is going to show me every single parameter value within that type that matches Titus. And I can actually start to click through the different values here and see what are the parameter values for each of the individual types. And it remembers that I'm filtering here for Titus. I find that to be really powerful, because when I'm looking for something real specific, I want to make sure the value is what I expect that value to be, and I want to know where within the family that particular property shows up. Like in this case, it's a manufacturer. In other cases, I was looking for like Lithonia lighting fixtures, and I found a lighting fixture, but it was based on Cooper lighting, and it had alternates, manufacturing alternates as a parameter in there, and Lithonia was listed as an alternate, not the primary. And so I was able to discover that prior to loading the content into my project, because I can inspect the values of the parameters and know exactly which parameter has which value in that family. So I find that to be really meaningful and really useful when I'm searching for content before I even load this into a project environment. Let's go back and try that other search again here, panel board 200 amp. Let's take a look at another example where these filtering of these properties might be meaningful. I'm going to open this up, or not open it, sorry. I'm going to go to the details for this. And within the details, keep in mind I'm searching specifically for 200 amp on a panel board. Now I can filter the parameters for 200 amp, but in the type names here, I'm seeing some information that indicates that it might be a 200 amp something. Again, this list could be long, so I'm gonna go ahead and filter this down to 200A and just kind of see what shows up. All right, I have two types within this panel board family that match that criteria, 208 volt 200 amp and a 240 volt 200 amp. Well, if I click on this, again, I want to know where within there if that property is actually set. Now here I can see current rating 200A. That's great, but let's just filter real quick. 200. That's great. I can see the mains is set to 200. The current rating is 200 for this panel and for this panel. This means that not only is the type name accurate, but the data values within there is accurate. I like knowing this. As a manager, I like knowing this, but as a user, if I wanted to load this type in, I want to know that I'm getting what I'm expecting to get, and I'm not going to be having problems in my project. So for the savvy, Revit family user, consumer, this can be really meaningful. And I can do this again for this panel board 2-column across, or I could do it for the 2-column down. I could do it for whichever I want. If I go into the detail for this one, I can do a similar filter. Show me the 200s over here. 200A, give me those. All right, cool. It's actually a very similar name. Show me the 200 value within that, and yep, same deal. I'm getting the correct values for this, different family, but similar values or the same exact values. So again, I'm validating here real quick. Yes, both of these families could potentially do exactly what I'm looking for. I'm able to filter within the types. I'm able to filter the parameters. I'm able to filter for the families and really find and dig through everything. And none of this required me manually opening a family to inspect its properties. So that's really powerful. That gives you a ton of information, and now I can make a decision. Is this something that I want to load? Great. I can go over here and load this into my project and continue using it however it is I want. But it started with me searching for something, filtering down to what I wanted. And then once I found what I wanted, or think I found what I wanted, I right-click, I grab its detail, and I inspect it just a little bit further. That just saves me time, because if I load a family and it ends up not being what I want, well, then I got to go search again and do more digging and load another thing into my project, which might slow some things down. So sometimes, by the way, those of you who are on the management front, you might have noticed there is an option in here for the source path. Newly processed content for Revit does actually have a source path for project-hosted content. In the case of regular Revit families, RFAs, they don't typically have a source path. But if I was to go in here and say detail, oop, I didn't spell detail right. Look at that, terrible. Try that again, detail. Detail index by discipline. We'll just go in here and check the detail for this. Oftentimes this will have a source path. This will tell you the original Revit project model that it came from. And now sometimes Revit families and some of the newest versions might actually populate the source path for families, but project-based data typically will populate that. So like this detail index by discipline, this is a schedule. It's a category that's a schedule category that exists within a project. What project did it come from? It came from this model here, something that was in my documents when I processed it apparently out of the MEP productivity pack. So it knows the original source path. And if you're seeing source paths you weren't expecting, like this is probably not great, it's coming from my personal documents directory. That's not ideal. I should have opened up the central model without opening up a local off of our central network drive. That would have been more ideal, but I can kind of visually validate that real quick. And I believe you can actually search that as well, because within the properties of the detail index, not in this case, sometimes you'll actually get the parameter value that is the source path. And then if you do get that, you can actually use that as a searchable property as well. So just another detail that I didn't point out earlier, this is a somewhat newer feature to the actual content details windows, is seeing the source path in that details panel itself. All right, let's jump back to the PowerPoint. Have anything else? No, I think that's actually it right now. So I'm gonna be jumping into the questions window here in just a moment, but for those of you who are watching this as a recording, or for those of you who don't hang out for the QA session, I wanna say thank you. We always appreciate when you do show up live or when you do kind of take a look at our YouTube channel, and we hope you find this meaningful. We hope this actually gave you some information that you can use as you're leveraging the content management system yourself in your office, and some different strategies you might use with your team. So we hope it earns a like and a subscribe from you on YouTube, and we do hope to see you back here in the future.